When the Xelari Council first detected Earth, they thought they had discovered a forgotten world left behind by time. Their ships observed from orbit, hidden behind cloaking fields, quietly watching the strange blue planet for several months. From a distance, Earth looked messy and unorganized. Different countries were constantly arguing, and humans had built cities full of noise, pollution, and strange customs. The technology seemed outdated compared to the smooth machines that Xelari used. Humans still used wheels to move around, burned fossil fuels, and launched noisy rockets into space that exploded fire just to leave their planet. The Xelari were calm, logical beings who had not fought a war in generations. They believed in harmony, science, and slow progress. So when they studied Earth's broadcasts and saw emotional speeches, sports filled with violence, and dramatic shows with shouting and laughter, they believed humans were foolish and weak. To them, Earth looked like a chaotic place full of confused people who had no idea how to manage a planet properly. The Council decided that Earth would be easy to control, not with war, but with soft influence. They would send diplomats disguised as helpers, offer humans small pieces of advanced technology, and slowly take charge of their systems. The humans wouldn't resist, because they wouldn't even realize what was happening. The Xelari believed they were doing something kind, guiding a simple species toward a better future. Among them, a young scientist named Kethel had doubts. He had read older exploration reports and noticed something odd. Earth had been scanned before, a long time ago, but no contact was made. The records were incomplete, as if something had gone wrong. Kethel requested permission to study Earth more deeply, and the Council allowed it, assuming he was just being cautious. At first, Kethel followed the usual routine, studying human culture, language, and society. He was amused by how humans celebrated strange things like dancing on television or diving into icy water for fun. But as he dug deeper into Earth's environment, something didn't make sense. The planet's weather was wild. He saw storms that tore down forests, deserts where temperatures reached deadly levels, and freezing regions where water turned to ice for months. The planet had earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, and strange things called wildfires that burned huge areas every year. There were deadly bacteria in the soil, poisonous creatures in the oceans, and insects that carried dangerous diseases. Even the sunlight on Earth was stronger than on most habitable planets, sending high levels of radiation through the atmosphere. But the strangest part was that humans lived with all of it. They didn't just survive, they built homes, raised families, and even went on vacations to dangerous places. Kethel ran simulations and realized that the Xelari could not survive on Earth for long. The gravity was stronger than their bodies could handle. The air, though rich in oxygen, would burn their lungs due to pollution and pressure. The microorganisms in the environment would infect them quickly, and the constant changes in temperature would cause their systems to fail. He ran more tests, comparing human behavior to other species studied in the past. No other intelligent species had adapted to such a hostile world. Humans had developed calloused skin, strong immune systems, and lungs that could operate in thin or polluted air. They could walk for days, run for miles, and continue moving even when tired or injured. In one video, he saw a man climb a snowy mountain with no oxygen tank, something that would kill most alien explorers in minutes. In another, he saw a child fall, bleed, cry, then laugh and run again, all in the same moment. Kethel began to understand that human strength was not only physical but mental. They adapted not just to the environment, but to fear, pain, and struggle. It wasn't just that Earth was dangerous. It was that Earth had shaped its people to be stronger than they looked. Curious and unsettled, Kethel sent a quiet message to the Council, asking them to delay their soft contact mission. He explained his findings, but the Council dismissed them, saying that humans were simply lucky and that their progress was slow and accidental. Kethel didn't argue, but inside, he felt something wasn't right. Earth was hiding something beneath its loud, unorganized surface. This was not a weak world. It was a place of constant trial and survival. Kethel decided to go further. If Earth had been visited before, perhaps those visitors had left behind a clue. He began searching through Earth's magnetic field for old signals, hoping to find any trace of earlier contact. The more he studied, the more fascinated he became. Earth had many layers, both in its atmosphere and in its history. While the Xelari Council prepared to send peaceful envoys to introduce themselves to humans, Kethel continued his quiet work, digging into the secrets of a planet that had been misunderstood. Something deep inside told him that humans were not what they seemed, and that making contact might not go as smoothly as the Council believed. But Kethel also felt something else: respect. For the first time, he looked at the messy, loud, unpredictable human species not with pity, but with awe. What kind of people could survive a world like Earth, and still laugh, sing, and explore the stars? What kind of species could grow strong in chaos? And what would they do if they ever realized that others were watching? Kethel sat alone in the observation chamber of the Xelari science vessel, eyes fixed on the shifting readings dancing across his console, as Earth rotated below him like a quiet mystery begging to be solved. He had scanned dozens of planets during his service, but none had ever presented such strange and conflicting results as this blue world filled with noise, motion, and life. Most habitable planets were calm, balanced, and slow to change, but Earth seemed to challenge every rule. Its atmosphere shifted constantly. Its clouds carried electric storms across oceans. Its tectonic plates rumbled with silent threats beneath the surface, and even its magnetic field behaved with strange bursts of energy that couldn't be explained easily. Kethel's curiosity grew into concern as he noticed that Earth's natural conditions were not just difficult, they were extreme. He checked oxygen levels and found them unusually high, to the point where combustion could happen more easily than on other worlds. The atmosphere was full of dust, microbes, and reactive chemicals. It wasn't clean or balanced. It was chaotic, like the planet itself had a wild spirit that refused to stay still. But that was only the beginning. The deeper he dug into the environmental data, the more impossible it all seemed. Earth's gravity was stronger than most habitable planets, strong enough to place constant pressure on muscles and bones. Radiation from the sun bombarded the surface every day, yet life not only survived but thrived. Creatures swam in acidic lakes, plants grew in salt-heavy soil, and entire species lived in icy wastelands or burning deserts. Most importantly, humans were at the center of it all, living, building, and evolving in the middle of a storm of dangers. Kethel decided to run a simulation. He used Xelari genetic data to model what would happen if one of his kind walked unprotected on Earth. The results were shocking. Within 2 minutes, the high oxygen levels would begin damaging their lungs. The gravity would crush their joints slowly but surely. Bacteria in the air would bypass their immune systems. Their skin would burn under the sun's radiation, and their nervous systems would fail from the constant environmental stress. Not in days or weeks, but in hours. Xelari, one of the most advanced species in the known galaxy, would not survive more than 3 hours on Earth. And yet humans did more than survive. They lived with joy. They played, explored, and even pushed their limits for sport. Kethel watched footage of a man climbing a frozen mountain with nothing but simple gear and determination. He saw another video of people swimming with wild sea creatures deep under the ocean. Children ran barefoot through muddy fields, laughing while rain poured down. Soldiers trained in the snow. Workers labored in deserts. No protection, no advanced technology. Just skin, blood, breath, and willpower. He began comparing Earth's data to planets marked as death worlds, places too dangerous for life. Earth matched the conditions perfectly, and in some ways, it was even worse. Yet somehow, humans had not only adapted, they had claimed this chaotic world as their home. Kethel adjusted his report again, now classifying Earth not as a weak world, but as a survival forge, a place that tested every creature born on it and strengthened only those that endured. But still, something bothered him. Why had the older scans been erased or hidden? Why had Earth been left untouched for so long if it was discovered earlier? Curious, Kethel accessed restricted archives from past survey missions. Deep in the system logs, buried behind layers of forgotten data, he found fragments of an old signal, weak, corrupted, and hidden behind Earth's magnetic patterns. It wasn't human. The message was ancient, and its structure didn't match Xelari communications. He spent hours rebuilding it, decoding it piece by piece, until finally, a single message appeared on his screen. Avoid Earth. Species adapting at unnatural speed. Planet environment unstable. Hostile. Warning. This world breeds survivors, not allies. Kethel sat still, his fingers frozen above the controls. Someone had been here before. Another species had studied Earth, seen the same strange power growing in the humans, and decided it was safer to leave. That alone made the hairs on his arms rise. He looked out the window again, down at the beautiful, storm-wrapped planet, and saw it differently now. Not as a world to control, but as a force of nature, a living machine of change, chaos, and hidden strength. When he brought this data to his superior, the response was casual at first. Interesting, they said, but humans are still primitive. They can't leave their system. They fight each other. Their technology is unstable. Kethel tried to explain that it wasn't their tools that made them dangerous. It was their biology, their mind, and their environment. Earth had taught them to adapt fast, to think under pressure, to take pain, and keep moving. Most species grew soft in peace, but humans were born in difficulty and called it normal. Kethel showed simulations of Earth's disasters, hurricanes, tsunamis, supervolcanoes, and explained how humans rebuilt, again and again, never giving up. They faced fear every day, and that had changed their minds and bodies in ways no other species had. He feared what would happen if the Council continued to approach Earth like it was an easy project. One wrong step, and humanity would recognize the manipulation. If that happened, the peaceful mission would fail. Worse, humans might decide to fight back, not with bigger ships, but with a power that Xelari had never faced before. The strength to survive anything and the stubbornness to never kneel. But his warnings were still not enough. The Council needed proof, so Kethel made a decision. He would prepare a direct test, a way to show the truth without risking open contact. He would simulate Earth's environment in a controlled chamber and invite elite Xelari to experience it. Quietly, carefully, he prepared for the experiment, hoping that once they felt the pressure, the heat, and the stress of a single Earth day, they would finally understand. As he looked down at the swirling clouds of the planet once more, Kethel realized something simple but terrifying. Humans had been shaped by fire, fear, and failure. They weren't weak. They were forged. And soon, the rest of the Xelari would see it too. Kethel knew he was risking everything, his rank, his reputation, and maybe even his safety. But after what he had discovered about Earth, he could not remain silent. The data was too clear, the patterns too disturbing, and the warnings too strong to ignore. His species, the Xelari, had always seen themselves as superior in intellect and evolution, but what Kethel saw on Earth told a very different story. So he did what no other scientist dared to do. He recreated Earth's atmosphere inside a controlled simulation chamber aboard their orbiting vessel, using exact readings taken from multiple regions on the planet. He carefully calibrated the gravity to Earth's level, adjusted the oxygen and nitrogen balance to match, and even introduced trace elements like ash, pollen, bacteria, and humidity to replicate the chaotic air of a rainy human jungle. The temperature was set to shift rapidly, mimicking the changes humans tolerated daily. He also added ultraviolet exposure similar to sunlight and background noise recorded from human cities, constant movement, voices, alarms, and distant engines. The chamber became a living copy of Earth's normal conditions, something that Xelari would consider wildly unstable. To test it properly, Kethel invited 5 elite members of his species' military and scientific corps, individuals trained to endure extreme situations. They entered the simulation chamber with confidence, their long limbs and pale skin shining under the artificial lights. They believed they would pass the test easily. But Kethel waited outside the sealed glass wall, watching silently with his arms crossed and eyes focused, knowing what would come. Within minutes, the first signs appeared. The thick gravity pulled at their bodies like invisible chains. Their posture changed. Joints strained. Muscles began to tremble under the unexpected pressure. One of the scientists started breathing heavily, the high oxygen level affecting her lungs, making her dizzy and unfocused. The air was full of microscopic life that Xelari immune systems weren't trained to handle, and though Kethel had filtered the most dangerous elements, the remaining presence was enough to trigger weakness. Sweat appeared on their skin, a strange reaction for a species not used to internal temperature shifts, and the heat only added to their discomfort. The noise in the chamber grew louder. Simulated sirens, engines, animal calls, and even human voices echoed in random bursts, just like on Earth. The elite group began to look around in confusion. They tried to speak, but the sound environment overwhelmed their focus. One of them collapsed, not from injury, but from pure overload. Her body couldn't process the constant stress. Another fell to his knees, trying to adjust his internal neural lens, which couldn't lock onto one clear source of light or sound. The simulation was not violent. It wasn't even hostile. It was simply Earth, alive, wild, unpredictable. And that was what broke them. Kethel watched with quiet sorrow as one of the strongest Xelari officers panicked and begged to be released. They all thought it would be easy, but Earth didn't fight with weapons. It fought with everything. Gravity, heat, air, life, pressure, light, noise. Humans had grown up inside this storm since birth. It was normal for them. It was home. But to the Xelari, it was unbearable. The test lasted only 30 minutes, and by the end, only one of the 5 remained standing. Barely. When the chamber opened, the survivors stumbled out, pale and shaking, some needing medical attention, others too embarrassed to speak. Kethel didn't say, "I told you so." He only handed the lead general a simple report, listing each reading and how it compared to the survival limits of other galactic species. The general said nothing at first. But later that night, Kethel received a message marked high priority. The council wanted a private briefing. The results had shaken them. For centuries, they had believed humans were behind in evolution, stuck in tribal violence and slow science. But now, they had to ask the question no one wanted to ask. If humans were shaped by a world that could break Xelari elite in half an hour, then what kind of power would they hold if they ever left that world? What would happen if humans brought their survival instincts, their adaptability, and their pain-forged strength into the wider galaxy? Kethel knew the answer, and it wasn't something he could explain in numbers. It was something he had seen in their eyes, in videos, interviews, and historic battles. It was the look of a creature that had faced extinction again and again and refused to die. It was a quiet fire that didn't fade, even when everything else fell. The council asked him whether the humans were a threat. He paused before answering. Then he said something simple. They don't want to dominate. But if someone forces them to fight, they will never stop. Silence followed. And then the council asked the second question, the one that would change everything. Should we contact them? That was the moment Kethel realized the galaxy stood at the edge of something it didn't understand. Contact with humans wouldn't just be about science or peace. It would be about preparing for a species that had already mastered pain, fear, and chaos, not through machines, but through will. If the Xelari approached them as rulers or saviors, they would fail. But if they came with respect and caution, perhaps a new alliance could form, one built not on weakness, but on shared strength. As Kethel looked once more at the swirling blue planet below, he whispered to himself, "Now they will finally understand." Because the test was done. The truth was known. Earth was not a weak world, and humans were not fragile. They were the product of the most dangerous environment the galaxy had ignored. And now, the galaxy would have to decide how to face the survivors it had almost forgotten. After the shocking results of the atmospheric test, the Xelari Council was still recovering from the realization that humans had unknowingly trained in the harshest environment in the galaxy. But just as they were debating how to approach Earth without triggering conflict, another discovery forced its way into the conversation, one even older, deeper, and stranger than anything they had expected. The clue came not from their own data, but from the humans themselves. It was a simple artifact, barely the size of a fist, dug up from the ruins of an ancient mountain temple in Asia. A group of human archaeologists had found it buried deep in layers of soil dated over 10,000 years old, far before recorded human civilization. What made it impossible to ignore was the symbol engraved on its smooth surface, an unmistakable Xelari glyph that hadn't been used in over 25,000 galactic cycles. The artifact was made of a material the humans couldn't identify, one not found anywhere on Earth. And somehow, it had survived fire, pressure, and erosion for thousands of years without a single scratch. The moment that Xelari scientists saw the news broadcast from Earth, Kethel's heart nearly stopped. The symbol was from a long-forgotten expedition, one that Xelari had buried in classified records, claiming the planet had no intelligent life and was too hostile for settlement. That expedition had been erased from public history. No one was supposed to know. But this artifact proved otherwise. Someone from their kind had come to Earth long before humans had cities, before they had tools, and long before they were called humans at all. Kethel pulled the old records from the deepest layers of the archive, bypassing encryption that hadn't been touched in centuries. What he found left him speechless. The ancient mission had been labeled Observation Protocol 7X, a quiet scouting trip to monitor early planetary evolution. The notes from that expedition were vague, but one thing stood out. Life form shows signs of rapid adaptation. Strong neural development. Primitive, but highly reactive. Recommend long-term observation only. No contact. But then the records ended. No final log. No return confirmation. Just silence. Kethel realized something terrifying. What if the scout never returned? What if they had died or been stranded on Earth, and that artifact was the only thing left behind? And even worse, what if humans had seen them? What if the stories of ancient gods, sky visitors, or watchers in early human myths were not just imagination, but the result of actual alien presence? He couldn't ignore the possibility anymore. If humans had unknowingly come in contact with advanced technology thousands of years ago, it could explain their rapid evolution, their unpredictable thinking, and their strange ability to resist extinction in situations that would destroy other species. Maybe something in that encounter had changed their path forever. Kethel submitted a full report to the High Council, urging an emergency investigation. They approved it, reluctantly, and a secret mission was launched to retrieve the artifact from Earth under the cover of a meteor survey. As the Xelari retrieval ship entered Earth's orbit, they activated their cloaking systems and sent down a stealth team at night. The team landed in the mountains near the excavation site, moving like shadows through the cold air. But things didn't go as planned. The artifact had already been moved to a private human research lab under high security. Kethel joined the mission personally, determined to see the object with his own eyes. He wore a human disguise, a synthetic skin designed to pass for a scientist, and entered the facility during a storm that had knocked out partial power. Inside the lab, he found the artifact resting in a sealed glass case, surrounded by machines trying to scan it. But none of them worked. The machines overheated or failed to read the material. Human scientists believed it was a meteor fragment or an unknown alloy. But Kethel knew the truth. It was made from Xelari soulstone, a rare crystal used to store memory patterns from ancient explorers. It wasn't just a symbol, it was a recording device, and if it still worked, it might contain a message from the long-lost scout. Kethel stole it silently and escaped back to the ship, where he placed it in a decoding chamber. As the ship ascended through the clouds, the artifact began to glow faintly with a soft pulse. Then, without warning, a hologram appeared in the center of the room. A tired, bearded Xelari stood in worn-out armor, his eyes filled with awe and exhaustion. He spoke only a few lines, but each one shook Kethel's soul. If this is found, then know this: Earth is not what we believed. The creatures here, they are not primitive. They are powerful, patient, and full of something we cannot explain. I have watched them learn, adapt, fight, and love. I tried to leave, but my ship failed. I chose to stay hidden. I became part of their myths. I watched them build from fire to steel. I don't fear them. I respect them. They will survive everything. Do not make the mistake of judging them by their tools. Their strength is deeper. Their minds are the future. And then the image faded, the artifact going dark forever. Kethel stood still for a long time. The council needed to hear this, but so did the rest of the galaxy. For too long, everyone had seen humans as unimportant, as latecomers to a galactic stage. But now, the truth was clear. The past had already spoken. Earth had been visited, studied, and judged by one of their own. And the judgment had not been one of pity. It had been one of deep respect. An ancient clue, buried in Earth's dirt, had told a story more powerful than any weapon. And now that story would change everything. Because the galaxy was not just dealing with humans. It was dealing with something older than they realized. Something stronger, hidden in the very blood of a species born under pressure, chaos, and storms. And that was a truth no one could ignore anymore. After the shocking discovery of the ancient artifact and the hidden message from a long-lost Xelari scout, everything changed. Kethel stood on the observation deck of the Xelari flagship, gazing out at Earth below, his thoughts racing. The message from the past had not only confirmed their suspicions, but had also shattered any remaining doubts about the true potential of humanity. He had seen it, the quiet strength, the resilience, and the deep, untapped power that ran through Earth's people. It was something that no alien species had truly understood until now. For centuries, the Xelari had underestimated humans, viewing them as nothing more than a primitive species on a fragile world. But the artifact had proven them wrong. The scout's message had made it clear. Humans were far more than they seemed. They had survived in the harshest conditions imaginable, evolving not just biologically, but mentally and emotionally, adapting to a world that could break most species. Kethel had once believed that the Xelari were the pinnacle of intelligence and evolution, that they stood at the top of the galactic food chain. But as he stood there, staring at the swirling blue planet below, he realized that the humans, with all their chaos, their uncertainty, and their unpredictability, might just be the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever known. They had something that no other species could replicate: a raw, unyielding will to survive, no matter the cost. The very fact that they had evolved on a planet that could break them, and yet they still thrived, was proof of their unique strength. It was a strength that went beyond physical power or advanced technology. It was a strength of mind, of spirit. Kethel turned away from the window and walked to the council chamber, where the rest of the Xelari leadership waited. The artifact lay in the center of the room, its glow dimming as if it too felt the weight of the discovery. The council members were already deep in conversation, their voices filled with a mixture of awe, fear, and uncertainty. For the first time, they were questioning their long-held beliefs about humanity. The council had once believed that contact with Earth could be beneficial, that humans might be a useful ally in the galaxy. But now, with the newfound knowledge, they were unsure whether humanity was an ally at all. They feared the unknown. What if humans saw them as threats? What if they realized that Xelari had been watching them for centuries, studying their every move? What if the humans wanted to rise up and take control of the galaxy, using the very strength that had allowed them to survive in the chaos of their world? Kethel stood at the head of the table, his mind clear and steady despite the swirling doubts around him. "We have misjudged them," he said quietly, his voice cutting through the tension. The council fell silent, all eyes turning to him. "Humans are not what we thought. They are stronger than we imagined, stronger than we ever could have anticipated." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But that is not a weakness. It is a strength. We cannot fear them. We must learn to respect them." The council members exchanged uneasy glances. "Respect?" one of them asked, a harsh edge in his voice. "Why? After everything we've seen, why should we simply accept them as equals?" Kethel's eyes hardened. "Because they have something we do not. They have survived the worst that their world can throw at them. And they have done so with nothing but their will and their determination. They have lived through chaos, through destruction, and they are still here. They have faced extinction time and time again, and yet they are still standing." "But what does that mean for us?" another council member asked, his voice filled with doubt. "Are you suggesting we just let them continue? Allow them to grow stronger without any checks?" Kethel shook his head. "No. What I am suggesting is that we must approach them with caution, with understanding. We must not treat them as primitives to be controlled or studied. We must treat them as equals. Because if we do not, they will rise against us, not with weapons, but with the same relentless will to survive that has carried them through everything. And that will be the most powerful force the galaxy has ever seen." The room fell silent once more, the weight of Kethel's words hanging in the air. Finally, the council leader spoke. "You are suggesting an alliance," he said slowly, his tone cautious. "But what if they reject us? What if they see our presence as a threat?" "They might," Kethel replied. "But we must show them that we are not their enemies. We must prove that we are not here to conquer them, but to learn from them, to understand what makes them so strong, to form an alliance based on mutual respect, not dominance." Another council member stood, his face dark with suspicion. "And what if they do not accept? What if they turn against us?" Kethel's eyes narrowed. "Then we will face them. But we will not face them as enemies. We will face them as equals, with respect, and with the understanding that they will fight to the very end. And we will not underestimate them again." The council fell into a deep silence, the tension thick in the room. It was clear that Kethel's words had struck a chord, but no one was ready to act yet. They had all seen the strength of humans, and they were afraid. Afraid of what a species like that could do if it ever decided to turn its strength against them. But Kethel knew one thing for certain. There was no going back now. The galaxy had underestimated Earth for far too long, and it had underestimated humans. No longer would they be seen as weak or insignificant. No longer would they be treated as mere bystanders in the galactic play. Humans were here to stay. And if the Xelari were to survive, they would have to learn to respect them. For Kethel, this was no longer just a matter of strategy. It was a matter of survival. The message was clear. Earth had something the galaxy needed. Not just resources or land, but something far more valuable, something that would change the course of history. And if the Xelari were to be a part of that future, they would need to approach humanity with the respect they deserved. If they didn't, they would face a force far stronger than any weapon. The power of will, and that was the one thing the Xelari could never defeat.